I did, worked in rock and roll radio primarily, and I did a lot of sort of lefty political stuff at the time. I had like a feminist talk show, two different ones actually. So yeah, interesting.
Super cool.
Conversations with indie authors.
And getting to know everybody is so interesting, and watching, like, the success arch is like, or is what I keep calling it, is like, there's just there's a level of people that, they hit in a certain amount of adversity in their life, and that adversity just exploded them to success. And it is so interesting. Like, these are massive things that people have been through and deal with, and those tend to be the most successful. It's how they're taking it on. Some people are like, "Oh, poor me, and I'm never going to do anything." This is where
That's not gonna work.
no, it doesn't. And then there's other people that take it and they're like, "Yeah, this is what I went through, and now here's where I am now." Like, and it's a beautiful experience. And those are the people that I just love meeting. It's
Well,
just
there you go, because I have a story that fits right into that category for you. I just put up, that's my book cover on the back of the door.
perfect.
Actually, so yeah,
Okay.
here's the book.
Yes. I love the posters. I love when people have the posters up in their wall. Yeah, I want to hear your story. I want to take it back to the beginning. And where did this all start?
Well, how far back in the beginning do you want to go? Like my childhood beginning, or that as I walked across the street beginning?
Well, you know what? First, let's walk across the street with you and what happened in that moment. Start us there.
Sure. I was leaving work. It was October 3rd, 2012. I was rushing home to catch the televised debate that was going to be on between then candidate Barack Obama and Mitt Romney. And I had parked on the other side of the street, so I was going into a crosswalk. I stepped off the curb, a car stopped for me, and just as I got in front of that car, I heard what sounded like an explosion, but very quickly found myself airborne. And what I had heard was the sound of a truck crashing into the car that had stopped for me, but there was no screeching of brakes. So it was usually when you hear a car accident, it's the screeching of brakes followed by the crash, and this was just the crash. And at the moment that it happened, my first reaction was to say to the universe or God or whatever, really? Because I had just come off of a period of time in which I had lost my mother, my sister, and my brother. And that had brought me to my knees, each loss separately, and then the cumulative nature of all of those losses. And I had finally gotten back up on my feet and was back up to full productivity and working. And so the thought that this was happening to me now, that I was being actually hit by a car as a pedestrian. And then a moment later, the next thing that kicked in, and I really don't know from where this came, but somewhere deep in my core was this sense of, okay, let's do this. Whatever this is going to be, let's marshal together all our resources and do this. And at no point did I think I was going to die, although I really came very close, not only during the accident, but in the immediate next 5 days when they couldn't control the internal bleeding. I was hospitalized. I had 4 pelvic fractures, and the whole right side of my body all the soft tissue was crushed. I've made a complete recovery, and the reason that I'm speaking out now and have written this book by accident, a memoir of letting go, is that I was able to use this experience as an opportunity for what I term post-traumatic growth. So we know a lot about post-traumatic stress. And I had plenty of that too, because flashbacks of the accident and all of that. But it was the first time in my life that I could not move. I could not do anything for myself. And I'd always been a fiercely independent person, a person in constant motion. a person who felt the need to accomplish, and got a lot of my self-worth from that, and had tried to be the perfect mother, the perfect wife, the perfect daughter, the perfect sister, the perfect employee, the perfect community volunteer, all of it. And I suddenly found myself absolutely helpless, truly helpless. And in a way, and I can say this now when I'm in no physical pain and no emotional pain to speak of, it was a gift to me. It was a gift to me because it allowed me to confront things that I'd never confronted. And it allowed me to learn some lessons that I needed to learn in this lifetime. And I'm a much happier person as a result.
And that's all because of letting go.
Well, letting go was a lot of it. I think I describe control as a seductive illusion. We think we can control things. What I've learned is that we can't control what happens in our lives. Things will happen. Loss will happen. Illness will happen, if not to you, to people you love. Injury, job loss, failure, houses burned down. Things happen over which you have no control. But what you do have control over is how you respond. And that's what I learned, that there were things that I could do to make the journey easier. And those are things that I have since found. And the book follows me through a few years where I encounter some additional challenges beyond the accident, including a very scary diagnosis, getting caught in a Category 4 hurricane in Mexico and having to be airlifted out by the Mexican military. I am not exaggerating. This happened. All of these things, I was able to use what I had learned to get through the worst of it. And there are lessons that I think people can learn. You don't have to be hit by a car to learn this.
If we can just listen to someone else that's gone through it before, that is so helpful. So what would you say is the biggest takeaway that people could learn from your experience?
Well, I have a few. I would say one of them, and some of these are going to sound corny, and you've heard them a million times, and I had rolled my eyes as well when people said things like this until I experienced it and saw the benefits. But something as simple as counting your blessings. Here's the thing. You cannot feel sorry for yourself and be in despair and feel gratitude at the same time. And the gratitude will always win. If you are sitting in despair, in grief, someone you love has just tragically died, you can also say, how lucky am I to have had that person in my life? I mean, there's just always a counter narrative that allows you to breathe and get through the worst of the pain. And in my case, I couldn't do anything to help myself. I was going to be losing a tremendous amount of money once my sick leave ran out. Disability is a drop in the bucket. But I was able to say, we're not going to lose the house. I'm going to be able to eat. We have enough money. I'm so lucky because I have a husband that works from home and works for himself and can alter his schedule to take care of me. I'm so lucky because I have adult children who are showing up and wanting to help in any way they can. I'm so lucky because I have the resources to get targeted therapies to help me through the worst of this. I engaged in something called somatic therapy, which is one of many modalities that's really good post-trauma. There are others, but that's the one I chose, and it was super helpful to figure out a way to not have the trauma lodge in your body. So often, trauma absolutely lodges in the body. And in my very first session with the therapist, she asked me to turn my head to the right and see the truck coming, and I couldn't move my head. And there was nothing wrong with my neck. That was not a part of my injuries. So it turned out it was like a graphic example of how I had already had some of this trauma lodge in my neck to avoid seeing what was coming. And she worked with me. And by the end of that very first session, I regained full range of motion in my neck. So that was proof to me that this was going to be helpful. And it was very helpful. what another thing I learned that I would say is of great value is no matter how horrible the moment is that you're experiencing, be it physical pain or emotional pain or fear or whatever, telling yourself that this is a moment. This moment is right now, and this moment's going to pass. And it's going to be replaced by something else, which may be worse and may be better, but it's not forever. And when you're feeling the depths of pain, it feels like it's going to last forever. So giving yourself this exit strategy, even just to know that this moment is going to pass, was hugely helpful. Another was trying to observe what I was learning. So one thing is people are not going to show up for you in the way that you necessarily want them to. People who love you may not even show up because they may not know how, or it may freak them out to see you in this condition, or a long list of other things. I, at the time, was spending a lot of time with my nephew's 1-year-old. I was babysitting a lot, helping out. My sister had passed away, so this child didn't have her as a grandmother. So I was being like a faux grandmother. And that was it. Once the accident happened, I pretty much didn't see him for a year. And it broke my heart. It would have completely cheered me up if they had come to visit. But for whatever reasons, they didn't. And, it was hard not to be hurt. And I needed to come to a higher understanding that, okay, this is what they're doing for whatever reasons. And I'm not going to hold it against them, and I'm not going to feel like they don't love me. They're just not showing it in this way.
Mm-hmm. I think that's important, what the stories that we tell ourselves, because someone not showing up, you can tell yourself many stories. They don't love me, they don't care, and instead you're like, no, I don't have to tell myself that story. That's
so
super
right,
powerful.
Brittany. We tell ourselves things all the time, and we convince ourselves of things. And so often the messages we're giving ourselves are not self-affirming. We're saying things like, who do you think you are? Or, right? Like, you're a fraud, or, just whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody does this. This isn't unique to women, although I suspect women do it more. Just a hunch. So what happened to me is, and this was like, as soon as that voice said, okay, let's do this, it became implanted in my mind as a mantra. I can do this. And believe me, I did not think I could do this. They told me that recovery was going to be up to 1.5 years. In my mind, recovery had only ever taken 2 weeks from anything. So I could not even imagine what months and months of pain and, all of it, dependency, all of it. I couldn't imagine what that was going to be. And at the beginning, I couldn't put any weight at all on the right side of my body. So even to get to the bathroom, I had to and I couldn't hop because the hopping action would disturb my pelvis, which was broken in 4 places. So everything was such an ordeal. And I just had to keep saying, and I did, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. And I convinced myself, because if you say something enough times for long enough, the message gets, drilled into your head. So that's, I think, a really good one, is paying attention to what you're saying to yourself. And if you're giving yourself undermining messages, stop. If relationships in your life are not serving you, if every time that one so-called girlfriend comes over, she makes you feel worse, don't ever come over. You got to take care of yourself, and you've got to do what serves you and helps you to move through the challenges of life.
Now, Joanne, people try control things in life because it makes them feel safe. And you're saying to let go of control. And a woman that's been working and doing everything and, being the perfect mom and the perfect, wife and the perfect, how on earth are you telling people to let go? And that's going to make things even better.
Well, it's all relative. So obviously there's plenty that you can control and should control, but I'm talking about someone like myself who really absolutely felt safer when I thought I was in control. So for instance, I wanted to be the person driving because I felt safer behind the wheel than being a passenger, where I felt like, I couldn't control the car. But it went beyond that. I think that in the way that I raised my kids. And how old are your kids, Brittany?
Oh, my oldest is 16 and my youngest is 1 year.
Okay, well, that doesn't even look possible. You don't look old enough to have a 16-year-old, but my oldest is 41. And so I've learned, and we have to learn, to take a very different role in their lives, so that for your 1-year-old, you're actually controlling his or her life. But for your 16-year-old, the way I like to frame it is that you are now a consultant.
Yeah.
You are no longer the manager. So you've planted all these seeds, and now you want this daughter or son to become resilient and independent and able to make his or her own good decisions and deal with the consequences when they don't, and all of that. So very challenging for me to learn that I couldn't control everybody and everything. In the workplace, it really was like all over my husband, just all over my life. And so I've learned to just kind of go with the flow more and accept when things happen. I'll give you an example. I find that at this stage of my life, and because I don't have a job with specific demands and hours and all of that, that I overschedule and overcommit and don't look at my calendar often enough. And yesterday morning was a prime example. On Thursday mornings, I have 3 possible exercise things that are all really compelling. One is a bar class, one is a Zumba class, and the other is actually a meditation and study. So they're all really good for my mind, body, and soul. Couldn't decide which one to do, decided to go to the Zumba class, drove the 20 minutes to get there, got there, parked the car, and my husband texted me and said, "You have a podcast in 7 minutes." So I flew back here, because the 20 minutes was because of the traffic heading south on the freeway. I flew back here, but in the meantime, I texted the podcast host saying I might be 5 to 10 minutes late. He wrote back and said, "Can't do it. I have a recording every 30 minutes and we're going to have to reschedule." But I didn't read that because I was driving, got all the way home, tried to jump onto the Zoom, couldn't get on, and was super frustrated because now I hadn't done any exercise. I hadn't meditated. I was now a stress ball, and I missed my appointment, which in the past, missing an appointment, I would have beaten myself up. "You idiot, why didn't you look at your calendar?" And instead, what I did is I said, okay, I didn't get into a car accident on the way home because I was probably driving a little bit faster than I should have. I now have an hour that I didn't think I had. So what am I going to do with it? And I walked the dog, and I came back and I did a half hour of yoga. And at the end of that hour, I felt ready to move on with my day without beating myself up, and just realizing that stuff's going to happen, right? I'm going to make mistakes, and it's okay. Did somebody die? No, nobody died. It's good. We can move forward.
Those are good lessons to learn. Not that they're easy, but those are really good lessons.
No, and you have to learn them again and again and again
before they actually
get
end. In there. Yeah.
Doesn't it?
No,
and I talk about how, it's so funny. People who are close to me crack up when I say, now I don't try to multitask and do 700 things at once. baloney. I'm still doing that. It's just I'm not doing it as much or as badly as I used to. Because here's the thing, you know what your issues are. You don't get to this stage in life. You don't have a 16-year-old child without knowing what your things are that you want to work on or that you wish were not the way they are. But, you know, you keep coming up against the same lessons. I have journals. I'm turning 70 in February, and I have journals dating back. I know, crazy.
You
I
look
have
beautiful.
journals. Thank you. I have journals dating back to 8th grade. And it's always the same thing that I'm writing about, like again and again, the same story, because it's who I am in this world. And I do think that we're here for a purpose, every one of us. And I do feel like discovering what that is part of our life's work, but also seeing that we can make change and that we can evolve. And, you know, my mom lived to 92 and continued to grow and be able to admit mistakes until the day she died. And I want to be that same way.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I want to talk to you about your radio talk show host, and you were a news anchor. Now, selfishly, I'm curious, like, what are some tips that you would have that I could do better, like, to be a better host or whatever? But I'm really curious because you said that you talked about feminism. And so I've gone back and forth in my life, and I'm like, no, not feminism. I just think everyone should be equal. You know, I just want,
that is
especially,
feminism, by
I
the
know, right? And so I'm like, well, don't label it, because then some people get mad. And then, like, yeah, label it because screw you. And, I've gone back and forth my whole life on that kind of thing. But I do notice, as a female in the business world, you get treated a lot differently than male counterparts.
You've noticed.
Yeah, I noticed a couple of things in my life. And there's even meetings that you don't get to go to because you're simply a female. And so you miss out on certain opportunities because of that. And
it's okay to be angry, Brittany. It's okay to be angry.
I'm like, you know what?
I have so many things to respond to. First of all, somewhere in there you said, yeah, but if I say I'm a feminist, some people are going to be offended. Or I don't even know if you used the word offended. You might have said mad. Okay, so first of all, we are raised as females to worry about what other people think of us, and to seek approval and to be a good girl. So that's first and foremost. You're never going to please all of the people all of the time, ever. And who is it that you really want to please? You know, these are questions to ask. So that's one thing. I would say you're a very good interviewer. You don't have a lot of the habits that a lot of people have, which is talking over the interview subject or verbalizing your You haven't done that once. Excellent. I think that the industry that I was in is very, very different today than it was then. And I was really fortunate enough to be in a golden age of radio where we got to decide. It was, now everything is done by statistics and surveys and what record, you can't choose what record you're going to play. You can't choose what news story you're going to cover. It's a money model entirely of what is going to generate the most revenue, allow them to charge the most amount of money for the sponsorships. It's a very, very different world. And so I feel super grateful that I was in it when I was in it. And I was producing radio programs during an era where I could get an idea and then go and make it happen. I mean, I can give you an example. This was in the 80s, I think. There was this whole crazy, I don't know if you'd call it a rumor or what, but a story that caught on that the devil was in rock and roll. You probably weren't born yet, but it was all about how rock and roll was adversely influencing the youth of America. And there were these sinister forces at work to embed these messages in the music. And there were examples of it. And I did a whole big documentary series on this in which I interviewed everybody from actual devil worshippers to a rock and roll priest who his whole ministry dealing with youth was through the music and through the lyrics of rock and roll songs. I interviewed a couple of rock stars. I mean, it was just an idea that I had, and I was able to get support from management to go and do that. Nothing like that exists today. Nothing like that exists anymore. So, and you don't make a lot of money. This is another one of the many things that people assume that radio DJs and news anchors. Now, if you're on television, you're on a network, yeah, you're making a lot of money. But there's a huge disparity between starting out and what most people's careers do. And same with writing a book. You don't make any money writing a book. In fact, you know that you've written some. It's the other way around. You spend money to write a book, and then you spend money to promote the book. And even if the book sells well, and my book's doing okay, it's really, I'm very pleased, but I don't ever expect to make back the money that I spent. So
I think you're right. I always get it. I'm like, oh, I get a check. That's cool.
absolutely. My book's not self-published. It's published through She Writes Press, which is a feminist press. There's that word again. It's all run by women, owned by women, and they only publish women authors. And I got to tell you, I have met some incredible women with stories that you would not believe from every walk of life through this, being a part of this organization. And to your question about being a woman in the business world and being treated differently, I've got to tell you, I've never sensed any weird competition or backstabbing or backbiting or anything like that. It's only been, how can my experience help you? Sharing resources, sharing lists, promoting one another's books. I learned early on that you need to have a lot of reviews on Amazon. And so my publisher brings all of the people, the cohort together. They publish 50 women in the fall and 50 in the spring. And we all wrote reviews for each other's books to get the numbers up. And I mean, it was a very different kind of professional experience. And I definitely attribute that in part to the fact that it's all women.
I love that. I think that's how women should interact in the world,
and they
in
don't
business
always.
and personally.
And they don't always, right? We all know that. I've had women bosses who've been the worst, and also women bosses who've been terrific. And same with male bosses who've been both. Because people are people, and people are always in it for different reasons. But in my career, I've always prioritized helping younger women coming up because, well, for so many reasons. First of all, because there were no women in broadcasting when I got in. I mean, there were literally like none. And, I came up at the same time as Terry Gross and all these, women who are icons. I just never went to the national level. I was only in the San Francisco Bay Area market. But I got to tell you, I had an opportunity to go at 2 points in my career to go national. And I opted not to because I had kids and they were solid in their life, in their schools, in their communities. And it would have involved moving both times, once to New York and once to Washington, D.C. And I didn't look back. It was fine. So we make choices as mothers with careers every step of the way. And sometimes we regret those choices. And I think generally we don't.
I think you're right. And we have to make those choices that involve our family and sometimes not doing things or sometimes doing things. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now I have grandchildren and they live in Los Angeles and I want to be really available whenever, because their parents have two really intense careers and they have a nanny, but sometimes the nanny's not available and sometimes they want to go away for a weekend and, I want to be there. So I make choices so that I'm available for them because that's a priority for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. So that is so cool. Like your life is so cool.
I mean, in moments, I love my life. I have to say, more than ever right now. I didn't always. I, like many of us, have ups and downs. I've gone through periods of depression. I've been frustrated with my job, my work, my whatever. You don't raise kids without having a million crises, right? As you know. And, but I'll tell you, this is a really nice phase of life. If you're healthy, if you can make it this far and you're healthy, it's great. Time for travel, time to, wake up in the morning and decide, do I want to do this or do I want to do that? Do I want to spend the day reading and you have all those options.
Freedom.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
As long as you don't look at what's happening in the world, because that's very scary.
I keep, and I would say when I was younger, I got really, really into politics, and I'm like, no, it's too stressful. Now I'm like, you know what? I'll look at things when they're important, but it's all important all the time, and it's all super stressful. And I stepped away. Yeah.
It's all about balance.
Yeah. Yeah. We have to go through so many things in life. Right now I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not adding more to anything. I have enough on my plate.
You have to take care of yourself. I do a podcast called In This Story with Joanne Greene that's available on all the podcast platforms. And that's where I do my memoir style essays. So they're all stories from my life or insights that I have, or they're nostalgic pieces. Some of them are memories. And my husband is a recording engineer, so he produces them, and custom music. The one today that we published just this morning is called The Roads Not Traveled. So all the things that ways my life might have gone had I made a different choice. And it's a lot of fun. I recommend it.
I was just say that sounds really awesome. I love it. That sounds cool. So what day is that on? And we can I'll put
every other Friday. But they're all there archived. I have actually 2 podcasts. That's one, and they're only like 4.5 minutes long, so you can squeeze them into some part of your day. My other podcast, I'm not in production right now. We're on hiatus, but it was a longer show, 30 minutes approximately, where I and a writer friend 30 years younger than me discussed different themes. The show's called All the F Words, and our themes all started with the letter F. So they could be feng shui, or fake meat, or fanaticism, or fundamentalism, or family functions, friendship. I mean, you name it. We have over 60 episodes of F-themed topics. And it's a lot of fun.
That is a lot of fun. So, well, if anyone connected to this today, how can we find you online?
Well, you can find me in many places. My website is real easy. It's Joanne, JOANNE -Greene, GREENE.com. I have a YouTube channel. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I'm all over the place.
And I will have all the links in the description box, and I will definitely put your book down there so other people can be inspired to live a little bit of a happier life.
Great. I love it. Thank you so much, Brittani.
Thank you for coming on, for spending a little bit of time with me today. I appreciate it.
You bet.
The Zarlequan Indie